Hello, my name is Kate, otherwise known as Ginger's Greetings here on YouTube and on Instagram, and today, my throat is really sore. Please don't feel bad for me. I promise I don't have COVID and I'm not sick or anything. I'm just incredibly stubborn. I had the brilliant idea of saving myself time by not writing a script and ad-libbing this video. I thought maybe I could be like those other YouTubers, especially art YouTubers, who will dub over their speed paint with interesting topics completely from their own brain. I actually really like these videos too. They have a lot of personality, and they sound a lot more organic than when you read things line for line. But then I felt like I was being flashed back to every presentation I have ever had all at once with a little bit of drama club improv horror story smashed right in. I don't know how to present without a word-for-word script or without going over the presentation over and over until I form a script in my head. And even then, if I'm anxious, it'll all leave my brain. To every teacher who told me I just needed practice, I appreciate your patience with me, but I just want to let you know that that phrase instantly tells me you don't know how anxiety works. Every single time I fumbled over my words, a little too much for my liking, I would end up starting the recording from the beginning. Even if everything up until that point had been solid, there's just a part of my brain that feels like I need to get it done in one go, with minimal rereading and editing. I gave up after about 15 attempts, and now we're back in my comfort zone so I can talk to you about my unemployment! Yeah! You probably have a lot of negative connotations surrounding the idea of unemployment. Maybe you don't want to feel like a failure, maybe the idea of being financially insecure scares you, or you don't want to be a burden to your loved ones. You might already know the embarrassment of having to constantly justify yourself whenever people ask you why. Or maybe despite never thinking that person would be you, you've ended up unemployed too. I was probably the last person I thought would end up being unemployed, at least for an extended amount of time. I've always been known amongst my friends as a bit of a workaholic, very much to their frustration. At my worst, I had 2 jobs and 3 majors, was president of a community service group, slept 4 hours a night, and had to be constantly reminded by my friends to eat. This was all without caffeine, by the way. I've always had a hard time settling down and taking breaks, which is part of the reason why I became unemployed. It's also what made it so hard. After working overtime at my job for 4 months, being the primary cleaner for a house of 7 and ignoring the pain that was building up every day, I ended up at a point where I couldn't work anymore. Suddenly, I couldn't do anything. Last year, I was diagnosed with tendonitis in my right wrist. At the time, I thought I'd work less hours for a bit, do some stretches, and I'd be good to go. But my employers put me on a medical leave and told me I wasn't allowed back until the doctor gave me the okay. It was jarring, but I was told I should be better in about 2 months or so. That didn't sound too terrible. But I wasn't better, and after getting an MRI, I learned that I have lax wrist joints. To summarize this quickly, the doctors theorized that the inflammation in my wrist pushed the weak part of the joint further out of place, and that while they couldn't guarantee me anything, it would be another 2 months or so of recovery. So what happened to the whole work thing? There's only so long you can be on a medical leave, or at least so long you get paid for it. The answer to that is that I quit. Before I had my MRI, the doctor told me that he had to send me back to work, since he couldn't tell them why I wasn't better. I couldn't do that to myself. I couldn't work and see myself get back to the place where I had started in. And thank God I was still under my parents' insurance, because with quitting, I lost my claim, which had paid for everything medically up to that point. Sorry, I know that was a pretty long explanation. To summarize all of that up, I got an injury at work that I was told I might never fully recover from, rendering me unemployed. I was also unable to clean, cook, do my laundry, and drawing was completely out of the question. I didn't feel like there was anything I could do other than lay around and watch TV, which, for me, was absolutely awful. My life was suddenly completely out of my hands, and I became extremely depressed. So how did I deal with it? For a while, I didn't. I spent my days being sad, watching anime, going to PT, and being sad again. Being unemployed or not employed meant nothing compared to the idea of not being able to draw, and potentially never being able to draw like I used to, ever again. But slowly, very, very slowly, things started getting better. I started finding ways around my situation, and as I found stability and strength in my joint again, I was able to do more for myself. That didn't mean I could go back to work yet, though. This was a transitional period for me, and when I was first able to really use the time I had for myself. The cycle of continuously being employed doesn't leave any room for you to think about or question your life. You barely have enough time to eat, catch up with your family, and sleep before you have to work again. And on your days off, you're far too stressed to really think anything about your future. As someone who used to work to distract myself from my thoughts, I never really questioned this at all. But as I move past the worst bits, that's really hard to say. And I started being able to really think about what I would do after I got better. When I went back to work, I started wondering if I wanted to go back at all. I had been working constantly, doing what others expected of me, and it took having everything ripped away and being forced into unemployment to really see what I cared about the most. I was made to draw and write and create. I didn't care if I could work again, so long as I could be creative. Now, I was thinking about moving from being basically forcibly unemployed to voluntarily unemployed, and of course there was a lot of guilt involved. Being unemployed is incredibly shunned upon in general, and my family kind of has a thing for working despite pain and suffering. Despite trying to validate myself to others, I felt like people didn't really understand where I was coming from, and because of that, I wondered if I was making excuses to be lazy. Maybe I just needed to suck it up and get back to the grind. I could not be more grateful that I had decided to start therapy before all of this happened. Because if I hadn't, I don't think I would have stuck to my guns. I'm pretty weak-willed, and it only takes one or two voices of rejection for me to completely change my mind and course of action. But between my therapist, who encouraged me to use this opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and my girlfriend, my friends, and my sibling, who were all willing to support me, I decided that even after I got better, I would take some time first to enjoy myself. And then, if I couldn't get any creative projects off the ground, I would go back to work. I think now is probably the best time to clarify, because I know a lot of people see those who don't work as leeches to society. I am not currently on unemployment, disability, or anything of the sort. Think of me as a housewife. I do a majority of the cleaning around the house now that I'm mostly recovered, and instead of taking care of kids, I make dumb videos and comics. As an add-on note to that, being on unemployment or disability is nothing to be ashamed of. Getting on either can be a difficult and embarrassing process, which I know after seeing someone close in my life get rejected for disability, and knowing multiple people who relied on unemployment during COVID. Honestly, I think people who accuse others of taking advantage of the system fall into one of three categories. 1, they've never actually met and talked with someone in that situation. 2, they lack compassion and they think that everyone is just like them, out for their own gain. Or 3, they're surrounded by money and they've deluded themselves into thinking that every poor person should just resell things online. No, really, I've actually heard that one before, applied to my own family. Point stands. These people are wrong. And if you're unemployed, on disability, or are in any situation similar, I'm proud of you. Keep doing your best. Being unemployed has changed what course I see myself taking for my entire life. If I hadn't been injured, I never would have stopped and realized that the path I was going down was wrong for me. It's not that I enjoy being in pain. My wrist hasn't fully recovered, and I don't know if it ever will. But in a strange way, I think that this was for the best. Life forced me to take a break I didn't know I needed. So now, I'll continue working hard on my creative pursuits until either that becomes my job or I decide to rejoin the workforce on my own terms. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, consider liking or commenting. I'm honestly pretty nervous to share all of this, so having some positive feedback would be really, really nice. It also helps push my videos into the algorithm. This has been Kate, otherwise known as Ginger's Greetings, here on YouTube and on Instagram, and I hope you have a really, really, really lovely day. Bye-bye!